We're currently doing a global survey on the global skills outlook. And, the early and top line findings are that, procurement is worried about AI and digital literacy within their team, stakeholder engagement, communication. But what the C-level are thinking about is this idea of commercial acumen, and are there people negotiating well enough? Now, I think that's a little bit, you know, of a telltale sign. Of course, they always worry, are we leaving money on the table or value on the table? But the fact that negotiation's not seen as something that procurement has to develop, because I think we also fancy ourselves as expert negotiators, that's our core skill. But, we might have a bit of a job to do, convincing the C-level that we are, absolutely delivering the benefits that they expect.
Thank you so much for joining another edition of The Never-Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement. Today, we have the great pleasure of hosting Tania Seary. Now, Tania is, for anybody that shockingly does not know Tania, she's the founder of Procurious, and she's so passionate about helping procurement and supply chain leaders reach their full potential. I can't wait to get into this conversation with you.
Hi, Sean. I hope you're well. Great to be joining you today. I'm actually dialing in from my home in London. So thank you.
Well, I hope it's sunny. It looks like it's nice weather out there and some lovely
really
flowers
sunny.
behind you. I would love to help you share a little bit of your story. How did you get into procurement and this tremendous journey that you've been on helping so many procurement leaders over a few years?
Yeah, just a couple of years. Yeah, no, look, I was studying my MBA, as a lot of people do, and I got the opportunity to apply for an exchange. I'd been working in marketing for the first 10 years of my career and landed at Penn State Operations and Logistics School and started taking some supply chain subjects and procurement and just fell in love. So I found there were a lot of similarities from sitting on the sales and marketing side to sitting on the other side of the table. And yeah, I just really loved it. And that was sort of late 90s. And that's when procurement was really professionalizing. I got the opportunity to work in the headquarters of Alcoa in Pittsburgh. And they were, rolling out everything, global savings databases, free markets, reverse auctions, e-procurement platforms. So I really got the opportunity to see it all. And part of that was bringing all the CPOs together. So that's something that I've really carried with me throughout my whole career afterwards. But yeah, that's when I fell in love with the profession.
I think falling in love with it is something that not everyone gets the opportunity to do. I know there's some folks that maybe they're in a role or in a corner of an organization and they only get to see one part of it. But when you really get to see the elegance of what good looks like and then help people go and create that, there's something so fulfilling about it. And I'm just imagining there's something that must drive you that is really fulfilling, that helps you get up every day and go and serve this community.
Well, I just think it's one of the best professions to be involved with because, the scope and the scale of what we do and the amount of influence we can have over both our organisations and the broader community is incredible because really, every dollar can make a difference to both the company and to the people that you're spending it with. So, and as we all know, it's an issues-rich environment, as I like to call it. There's never a dull day in procurement. There's never 2 days are rarely the same. And I think with AI, that'll help us even more because a lot of the more monotonous tasks will be going. But we'll leave AI for a bit later. But absolutely, it keeps you on your toes.
Never a dull moment for sure. I think there's enough people that feel like it's been hard for them to take a vacation or a day off since the 90s. I know we created our favorite character, the procurement curmudgeon, to kind of reflect a little bit of that sentiment of just how sometimes it really does feel like there's always a fire, there's always an audit, there's always something. And it's an opportunity to go and, as you said, issue-rich, target-rich environment to go and find ways to go make it better. This kind of never-ending climb, as I talk about it, of leaving the world better
Yeah.
than you found it. Um,
Mm.
you've created something delightful with Procurious.
Oh, thank
It
you.
takes a
Thank you.
real spark to go and not just come up with the idea, but then to go do it, right? It's like there's so many people talking about AI, and then there's a handful of people doing something with it, and then there's even fewer people really making it work. And I think there's a lot of people that have talked about getting some people
Mm.
together. They might get a dinner together once in a while, they might do one or two things, but
Mm.
you've created an enduring community,
Yeah.
and you're passionate about helping unlock
Hmm.
people's potential. If you're a procurement leader and you're worried about whether your team can go the distance, what would you invite them to consider?
Well, first of all, we've got to remember that it is a never-ending climb. I think the title of this podcast is so apt because, it's about consistency, isn't it? If you have a goal and you're convinced that's where you want to head, you've got to go the distance. I mean, you have got to commit to that never-ending climb. There'll be a lot of setbacks. The clouds will come in. You'll have to pitch the tent, take cover, you'll have to get your energy back, but you keep your eye on the prize. And that's the same for you, for me, and for everyone listening in their career. If you are ambitious and you want to, you see yourself at the sea level, then you've got to see yourself there and you've got to work towards it. I think the thing about the never-ending climb analogy is, there are more than one ways to get to a mountain, the peak of a mountain and a summit. And we used to think that careers were linear and you just went straight up that mountain. But in reality, now we know that it's more like, well, I think it's been likened to sort of a series of monkey bars or, what is it, snakes and ladders? Yeah,
Switchbacks. I
exactly.
like I like to think about
Yeah,
switchbacks.
exactly.
A good guide will tell you you don't just march straight up the mountain. You pick you find your route through it. Sometimes
Yeah,
you go over a boulder and then around some trees and out through an open
yeah.
field, and before you know it, it's not just a direct route. You're 100%
It's
right.
And there's different people that will help you on the way. And, a lot of people ask me about mentors, and I just believe so strongly that you can have mentors and guides, but they're not as formal as a lot of people think. And when you think about climbing a mountain, it's a great metaphor, actually. You will have the people that have helped you with your food and your gear and your pack, and then there'll be someone along the way that'll give you directions. There'll be some technical advice you need at different stages. So at each stage of your climb to the top, you need, different people supporting you, but it definitely takes a team. But as I always say, there's only one common denominator in your career, and that's you. And you definitely have to take accountability for your own development. Bosses will come and go. Your peers will, try and distract you or, almost derail you. But you're the one who's got to have that drive and that vision and be heading towards your true north and stick with it.
Yeah, there's some leaders that are out there that have made such a tremendous difference. And there's a
Mm.
courage that I absolutely adore seeing in a leader that is ready to understand the problem deeply enough because they've put in the work to go
Mm.
become the person that actually understands the problem. And then courageous enough to go
Mm.
make the decision that they will own
Mm.
going forward, but that gets
Mm.
them their organization, their team, and themselves through that journey in ways that,
Yeah.
doesn't just make it a more direct route, but it even takes out entire steps, right?
Yeah.
And there's a
Def-
really powerful opportunity for leaders to, I think, take advantage of coaching, mentoring, learning,
Mm.
groups like Procurious, where you can go and
Mm.
start to see what good looks like
Mm.
elsewhere, which is often so hard to do inside an organization. You've been such a strong advocate for raising the profile of procurement.
Mm.
It's often misunderstood, right? It's often underappreciated. And it's in so many organizations, it feels like the part of
Mm.
the organization where when it's running well, nobody notices, which is very difficult to go and be recognized as a
Mm.
leader if we don't take some time to say,
Mm.
hey, look at what we did,
Mm.
look at what I did, look at what our team created, look at the outcome we've created, and to tell those stories. What are you
Mm,
seeing
mm,
as what patterns are you seeing in leaders that become true
mm.
business leaders as opposed to those who kind of quietly serve in the back room, toiling in obscurity to a certain
Mm.
extent?
Yeah. Well, look, my favorite leaders, so I'm not going to say all leaders are, but my view is a sense of curiosity. And I think that starts at the top all the way down because, great CEOs are the first to say, I don't have all the answers. They've got humility and they're actually relying on you. Whoever's watching, commodity manager, buyer, analyst, to give them the answers because you're the specialist and the expert in that area that you're managing. So they're not. They're relying on you to be the expert. So you've got a lot of knowledge and a lot of, critical information that can really help steer the business strategy because you are out there in the community. You're listening to the supply base. You're understanding what your competitors are doing much more so than the C level. So I think this sense of curiosity is really important. And that also means that you shouldn't be afraid to ask questions because really at the moment we should all have a lot of questions.
Oh
And,
yeah.
it's great to ask questions, particularly of your suppliers, of your stakeholders, because that's where you'll find, you know, out what they need, but also you'll find out what nobody knows. Okay, so we've established actually nobody knows the answer to this. So we've got to structure a way to find out because the world is moving so quickly that you really need to be curious and to be on a lifelong learning journey. And I do worry about those who stay within their four walls of their company. They don't look out, they don't speak to their peers, they don't know what's happening in the marketplace. And really, if you think of the essence of business strategy, it's competition. And competition means you've got to beat someone. So you can only beat someone if you know what you're racing against. So, the very nature of
Yeah.
business strategy and competition means that you do need to understand the landscape. So if you're just sitting at your desk at home, you're not going out and seeing your suppliers, going on safari, as we're calling it, getting out in the wild with your suppliers, go crazy. And then also speaking to your peers, people from other industries and how they're handling AI. How are they working out the commercial terms in their contract to, cater for the changes that are about to come? How are they going to tackle the consumption pricing question? All these things that you can work out together and just have comfort in the knowledge that, you're thinking about the same things. You're worried, you're challenged with the same things. You're not alone. So, yeah, I think curiosity is a long, short answer in a long-winded way, Sean.
Curiosity is one of my favorite traits. It is
Mm,
so powerful. A
yeah.
couple of the underappreciated elements about curiosity. It is often one of those things that unlocks invention as we get curious about
Mm,
what's possible. I also find
absolutely.
that it is a wonderful opportunity to help us communicate with others. And through all
Mm,
the various things that we need to negotiate and navigate, and stakeholders that we need to help support and manage and set and manage expectations for, and sometimes even on the family side, staying curious is
yeah.
such a powerful tool,
Mm,
right? Help me understand, right? That dig deep to understand what really matters. Now, whether that's talking to, a kid or a teenager or an intern or an analyst or a senior executive, getting curious about
mm,
what matters to them and what do they
absolutely.
see is
Mm,
such a powerful way
mm,
to find that
mm,
next level of what amazing looks like. So yeah,
mm.
I also love the name Procurious because I mean, there's that word right there.
Exactly.
Um, I,
Yeah,
one could argue that being a professional at being curious is really the unlock that helps
yeah,
across the whole system.
it really is. It is definitely. Um, Yeah, I just go back to business strategy and how quickly the world's changing. And if we just stay still and think the skills we've got, the knowledge we've got now is going to serve us into the future, well, it's not. You know, you're not going to be able to go the distance with the current skill set. So you need to keep abreast of what's happening as much as you possibly can just to stay in the game. So that's what we're trying to do. You know, our program's really agile, to use an overused word. We consult with all our members on what are the skills they see. We deliver it for them because, you know, we have to be pragmatic at the moment. They're really specific skills and knowledge that people need that we can help them get across in a very short period of time.
I love the idea that there is a group that is accessible to leaders, that they can go and learn from experts, from their peers,
Mm,
and create that peer group because
yes.
it's been, there are so many examples of leaders who have been successful within an organization and they went out and learned from peers, from some experts. They, you know, sometimes they invest in it themselves, and sometimes they get company support to invest in it for them through a learning and development credit. But the difference between understanding what good looks like today in their world and
Mm,
looking up and out and discovering that actually good's way up here and that idea is applicable and achievable in
mm,
their organization, and all of a sudden they become that leader that brings that home, that
mm.
then creates that opportunity for them to become the leader that
Yes.
creates that change, that creates
Mm.
that next level opportunity for them in their career. It's a pattern that's repeated through the ages, and you're one of the people that's helping make that happen. Thank you. Um,
Well, I
right?
think too, you know, we talk about storytelling and we talk about, you know, our ability to communicate in the C level, and there's nothing more powerful than being able to say, well, I was talking to, you know, X company last week and they told me blah, blah, blah. And they're like, how do you know that person? Oh, you know, how do you know that? Well, you know, he's part of my professional network and, you know, we just learned so much through conversation with each other.
Yeah.
And they're the interesting things that when you come back into your own organization, as you say, Sean, you can share that with others and they go, gee, that, you know, she's connected, he's connected, he knows what's going on out there, because you're bringing the outside world into the business to help make decisions about, are you ahead, are you behind, are you investing your energy in the right things? So, yeah,
Absolutely.
look,
What's
obviously
worked
I'm
for
very
you?
biased on the power of this.
Yes, absolutely. You know, we think about the opportunity to spend 9 months in a grand study for an RFP that in many cases you're able to go and get the answer to in a 30-minute conversation of, yeah, our businesses are just about alike. Did this work for you?
Mm.
Yes. Would you do it
I don't
again?
think we'll be spending
Yes.
9 months on an RFP ever again now that we've got all our AI tools. But yeah, no,
Right.
exactly. Done in a vacuum. You know, how many times has business strategy been done in a vacuum, and only to spend a lot of money and time and find out that it's not going to work in the market? And that's
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking about. So yeah,
Yeah.
you've got to know what's happening in the world.
There's something really powerful too about your perspective because you get to work with so many procurement leaders. You get to collect feedback of what keeps them up at night and then go and
Hmm.
create and curate opportunities for them to learn.
That's right.
What do you see as the things that procurement leaders today, what's keeping them up? And what are you seeing the leaders really doing successfully to tackle those things?
Mm. Well, look, I think what's keeping people up at the moment is definitely this rate of change. And you know, everyone's thinking about, well, what role should they play in the AI revolution? Like, where does procurement sit in it all? Absolutely, that's something. But I also think we're right now in a perfect storm because as well as still having to manage supply disruption and needing to know, have transparency, needing to worry about, you know, human rights, you know, the whole plethora of things that procurement professionals need to worry about. We're now being pushed on costs again. So we've got all the COVID issues that we've had to learn to manage, plus a cost down environment. And it's like a perfect storm at the moment, because if you joined the profession, say in 2020, you haven't had to go to market because you kept your suppliers during COVID, you rewarded them with a contract extension. So you've had probably the same supply base for 6 years, and you know how to manage all these challenges. But now your CFO is coming to you and saying, right, we're in a major cost down environment. So you now have to go to market. And a lot of people haven't even done strategic sourcing before. So, that's the perfect storm of skills. I think what's keeping them up at night is this AI and the rate of change, as well as the cost down environment, how they're going to manage risk at the same time. But I think, well, I don't have to think, I do know, because we're currently doing a global survey on the global skills outlook. And, the early and top line findings are that, procurement is worried about AI and digital literacy within their team, stakeholder engagement, communication. What the C-level are thinking about is this idea of commercial acumen, and are there people negotiating well enough? Now, I think that's a little bit, of a telltale sign. Of course, they always worry, are we leaving money on the table or value on the table? But the fact that negotiation's not seen as something that procurement has to develop, because I think we also fancy ourselves as expert negotiators, that's our core skill. But, we might have a bit of a job to do, convincing the C-level that we are, absolutely delivering the benefits that they expect. And also, it's great to see that they're expecting commercial acumen, because this conversation, judgment, the value, the strategy piece that I think is really interesting for procurement, and a skill that we need to develop even more.
Commercial acumen, business acumen, the negotiation is interesting so long as we are negotiating for things that fit the strategy. One of my favorite examples was several years ago. Our team was working with a company, and we'd gone all the way through the proposal stage. The business had selected our team, and the proposals were all done. The pricing was all settled. The statement of work and so on was all, and there was procurement, in along the way. And then all of a sudden, either a personnel change or something came in. And just as the document was about to be signed, it was, by the way, we need to pay you we're going to pay you in net 60. And we said, oh, you need to borrow some money for 30 days. And they said, no, we're going to pay you in net 60. And the irony of the conversation seemed to be that the procurement person did not actually understand that by moving a supplier from net 30 to net 60, they were borrowing money for 30 days. And the most curious thing unfolded as, our team took the approach of, hey, listen, we've already done all of the negotiations, all of the, this is all set and it was ready to go, but I hear that you're asking for something. This sounds, getting curious, like it's important to you and your boss. Is this something new? Because this hasn't come up, and, this coming up at the last minute seems unusual. And that idea that this suddenly was very important to them. But from a business strategy perspective, what was really fascinating is, as we set it up to say, hey, cool, if you need to borrow some money for 30 days, that's okay, but it's not free. So that would cost you an extra 1%. And, call it 12% a year, cost of cash, etc. I'll let you make the call, right? Option A, same price, everything else the same. Option B, net 60, but it's 1% more expensive.
Yeah.
Now, fascinating, I did look up, their cost of cash was 8%, because they're a public company. We were able to go look it up.
Yeah.
And they chose to pay 1% more so that they could have net 60, which didn't necessarily make sense from a broader business strategy perspective. They just cost themselves some money, which is the exact opposite of the point of what I know they were trying to accomplish. And so the commercial acumen, Tania, I can't emphasize that enough, where you sometimes have how many suppliers are we pushing in net 60 or net 90? without necessarily appreciating that often needs to be paid for somehow. Now, we made it literally A versus B option with, the price and everything else right there. And so what shocked me to this day is still shocking. And I think in terms of getting curious and commercial acumen, I would hope that as an example, this could be part of the story of, when a procurement leader is worried about whether their team can go the distance, if their team is still recommending that they pick the more expensive options so that they can check a box on a list of moving customers over, it really is quite curious.
Well, this might be a good example of actually autonomous sourcing might do a better job than some of our procurement professionals, because the bot won't let it get away with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But, also just, thinking more about business strategy and where the world's heading and, actually, should we even be buying this anymore? Some big sort of strategic questions that they can come in and debate at the C level. Yeah. So I think that's really important, and a lot of trade-offs. We'll have all the data in front of us, but what are we going to rate higher than others? So it's going to get complicated, but that's when we're going to be called in as humans to make some judgment calls, and we've got to be ready with our questions as well as a lot of answers.
Yes, powerful, deep, insightful questions. The best things. Tania, speaking of powerful questions, if you think about what you wish you could tell Tania from, 10 years ago or early in your career, or what you wish you could tell a, category manager who wants to be the category director, head of strategic sourcing, future CPO, what would you share with them?
Look, the first thing that came to mind was it's a marathon, not a sprint. I've always treated life like it's a sprint, but maybe that's why I've enjoyed certain achievements along the way. But I mean, I think definitely taking a long-term view on your career, and maybe when you're a bit younger, sort of biting your tongue a little bit and just holding and keep on going, particularly in large corporates, because you can be very frustrated with decisions that are made that you don't understand. Often people don't explain it to you, but there will be a reason, and you'll probably find out why in 10 or 20 years' time. So I think just go the distance. What I really admire about the next generation of professionals is that they do have a lot more boundaries, between their work and their personal life, and that they do understand the importance of, regrouping, getting energy, bringing your best self to work. So I think that's a real asset for the next generation. But, you've got to go the distance. You've got to hang in there. You've got to do a few rounds in the ring. You've got to see a few things fail. You've got to be in the office, is my view, because a lot of commercial acumen is about learning from your bosses and your peers. And, hey, why did you do that? You don't ask that on Zoom. You've got to be in there and see what's happening in between other senior leaders and hearing stories that you wouldn't even think to ask. So I'm a big believer in being out in the wild, going and seeing your customers. I'm a big face-to-face person. I'm a big relationship person. And I think Zoom is super convenient, but you don't have the sort of conversations that you have in, one-to-one when you're facing each other about family, marathon sprints, theatre, what have you, where you really get to understand someone. So, and that's an important part of doing business, is really understanding who you're working with.
We are not robots. I think as just a yes and on that, Tania, because it is very much the never-ending climb, and it is the marathon. And the people that we get to work with along the way can make that grueling and miserable.
Oh, yeah.
A hell of a lot of fun. And, when we think about the, just as a word of caution, there are certain categories of spend where let's all take care that we're not inviting and selecting suppliers without ever having met them and gotten to know who they are. Because I think that there are folks in life where you might meet them and go, oh, where's my wallet? and need to double check. And then there are those who you meet and, lovely people like yourself, and you go, hey, I'm looking forward to working with that person. And, I think the joys in life that make that never-ending climb so much fun are getting to work with great people, and life's too
Yes,
short to do the opposite.
that's right.
So thank
Mm.
you so much, Tania, for joining us today.
Thank you.
For
It was great. Lovely
yeah,
chatting with
likewise, and bringing Procurious to life. And thank you for your tenacity, your persistence
you.
for a few years. One doesn't need to say how many, but
No,
for
that's
bringing this
right.
to life and serving the community. And so a shared mission that we have in our own ways. Tania, thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
thank you. And for all of you watching, this has been another edition of The Never Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement. We'll see you next week.